Hello, everyone, and welcome to Classic Vinyl Podcast. I'm your host, Justin, and I'm here this evening with my co-host, Tyler.
Yes, who will now be breaking his vow of silence. I promised to be quiet for the first few seconds.
And you did well.
Yeah.
I don't mean to be such a slave driver like I am at times, but you did very well just sitting there in silence.
Usually I just prattle on endlessly.
Well, so for our first-time listeners, to kind of give you an idea of what we do here on Classic Vinyl Podcast, we listen to a classic album from the vinyl era of the 60s and 70s right before we go on air.
Yeah.
Most of these albums I've had the chance to listen to and own, and I've listened to them for years. But Tyler, on the other hand, has heard a lot of the radio hits on these, but is being introduced to new songs. And I would say most of the albums we've done so far, you have been introduced to some new songs.
I think every album that we've reviewed so far, there's been at least one or two songs, at the very least, that I haven't heard before.
And that's good. I mean, it's good to get your take on them. And, you know,
Yeah.
the interesting thing is a lot of these albums I've listened to for years and years, but putting them on the turntable and actually listening to them in the manner of, hey, we're going to review this, kind of sheds a different light on them for me as well. So
Yeah.
it's an interesting take. And we've got a lot of albums to get to. We've got a list of a few hundred of them we want to get to. Common ones that people have heard and some not so common ones that will be coming up soon.
And I have a lot of opinions about all of these.
And funny enough, so do I.
Yeah.
But, you know, we'll also take requests that you can email us in, and we'd be glad to review an album. So, you know, feel free to do that.
We're not that hard-nosed.
But tonight's album's a pretty good album. It's from one of the most famous bands in rock and roll history, the Rolling Stones. We're going to cover Let It Bleed.
Yeah, this is quite the popular album.
It's one of my favorites of theirs, which is why I chose it for this evening. But you know, they've got a lot of good albums and a lot of good songs.
Yeah, this isn't by anywhere near their first album, but boy, there's a lot of big hits on this one.
Yeah, and you know what, I really do love the Stones. I mean, the Beatles are one of my favorite bands, and I don't like that play of, you know, who's better or whatever. I like the fact that we can have both of them.
Yeah.
To me, that's what's important, because we've talked about that before. Why have one band? I mean, yeah, there's a lot of Stone songs I don't like, and there's a lot of Stone songs I love, and that goes for the Beatles, that goes for the Doors, the Who, Cream, whoever you want to talk about, right? I like the bands, but I'm definitely an album guy. You know, when I get on Spotify and everything, I play everything in album order. I'm still used to that, and it's the way I like hearing things. So I don't like shuffling too often.
Yeah, this album was my very first clear vinyl record.
Yeah, I have Let It Bleed in clear vinyl.
Yeah,
which it's not a bad sounding vinyl, actually. So
no, it was quite enjoyable.
And inside the cover it said this needs to be played loud, so we played it loud.
Yeah, we're obedient.
So for people that don't know, which I assume most people do know the history or the basic history of the Rolling Stones, we'll go through a few little things here. They were formed in London in 1962, so this band's been going strong for 6 decades.
Yeah.
I mean, they are still going strong, still touring. Mick Jagger's in excellent shape. He dances all across the stage, which is pretty amazing for a 80-year-old man.
Yeah, he must have quite the workout routine.
I know he has something, but it keeps him going. And, you know, I have a friend that went to him a couple years ago and says they're worth every penny. I myself have not seen the Stones, and I hope, you know, they come in our area one more time, because, you know, the kind of bands I love, unfortunately, they're all dying off.
Yeah.
And I don't have as much chance. You know, I've seen The Who a couple times. I've seen a couple of the surviving members of the Doors. I've seen Paul McCartney a couple times. Going to go see Ringo Starr this summertime.
Yeah.
But most of the bands that I love and know from the 60s and 70s just simply aren't around to go see.
Yeah. Keith Richards still around. I'm thinking he's probably going to outlive us all.
Yeah, that is if he's alive. A lot of people think he died years ago.
Yeah, that's very probable. I mean, he's probably just pure cocaine, just kind of triggering his nerves.
Well, everybody says how old he looks, but if you look at pictures of him from the late 60s, he's he was an old-looking man then.
Yeah, he always looked 40 years older than Mick Jagger.
Yeah, he did. So the Stones are made up of course, Mick Jagger is the lead vocalist. Initially, they had Brian Jones, who was kind of the leader of the band, who played multiple instruments. You know, obviously Keith Richard, who played guitar, Bill Wyman, who played bass, and Charlie Watts, who played drums. And Charlie Watts actually just died about a year and a half ago at 80 years old. So I believe they're just touring with a touring musician now. They haven't replaced him with a band member.
Yeah.
But I have heard news that Paul McCartney and Ringo Starr are actually recording with them, which is kind of strange. After 60 years, they're finally going to do something together as a band.
Did Paul and Ringo run out of other things to do, other projects?
Well, I don't know. Maybe since Charlie Watts died, the Stones needed a drummer, so here comes Ringo. And if Ringo's coming in, Paul might as well. You know, I guess it's good that we're getting this, right?
Yeah.
For me, loving both bands as I do, it's good to see, you know, some kind of compilation by the group. And it remains to be seen what it is. I don't know if they're recording one song, putting an album together. It would be really neat if they did an album and did a tour together. I mean,
yeah. Regardless of what comes out of this, what would you call it? Collaboration? Yeah.
Yeah.
There's going to be a whole lot of money.
It'd be really neat if it was a full album and they were to tour together. And that would be something amazing for me. But anyways, getting back to the kind of basic history, Brian Jones, you know, got way into drugs and had some mental issues, and they actually fired him during the making of this Let It Bleed album.
Yeah.
He's only featured on 2 tracks.
He joined the 27 Club shortly after.
He did. Yeah. Mick Taylor replaced him during this album, so Mick Taylor's on I believe all the songs except 2 of them.
I wonder how they did. Do they think they call him Jagger and Taylor because there's 2 Micks, or is that that's kind of racist to say there's 2 Micks in a British band?
Yeah, I don't know.
That sounds like because I mean mix is like a derogatory term.
It is if you're using it that way. Irish. Yeah. But, you know, Keith Richards and Mick Jagger were actually childhood friends. And funny enough, kind of going back to the Beatles a little bit, Decca, the record company that rejected the Beatles, who I'm sure they're very sorry about that now, they actually were the ones that signed the Stones, which I guess if you don't get the Beatles, the Stones are a good consolation prize. And I don't even know if I'd consider it that. You know, to me, and I'm going to say it one more time, is us as music lovers, or anyone as music lovers, just ought to be happy that we do have the Beatles and the Stones, not one or the other, you know. And even if you don't like one or the other, I would think you could at least appreciate what they've contributed.
Yeah, you know, regardless of if you're a fan or not, you're gonna know at least some of their songs.
Yeah,
and you're probably gonna like them too, whether you admit it or not.
Yeah, I think a lot of them. I mean, but there's a lot of Beatles haters. There's a lot of Stones haters too, you know. And generally, it seems like they happen to be fans for one camp or the other, which is unfortunate. But so the Stones' first single was a Chuck Berry song called "Come On." It was released and reached number 21 in the UK charts. And their second single, funny enough, was "I Want to Be Your Man," which reached number 13 in the charts, and that's actually a song that was written by Lennon and McCartney for the Stones, and Lennon and McCartney later recorded it as well. I do prefer the Stones version to the Beatles version on that. But their first number 1 hit was "It's All Over Now." It was a cover of a Bobby and Shirley Womack song. And it's not a bad song, but that was their first number 1 hit in the UK, which kind of got them going, you know. And it wasn't until their second album, which was the Rolling Stones number 2, really classic album name there.
Yeah.
It was the first one to hit number 1 in the UK. Now, that album only hit number 5 in the US, but that's pretty decent, you know, for a second album. So
it really is, especially considering like the record that we're seeing or the track record between the United States and Great Britain. A lot of times you're going to see number 1s in Britain, and the United States, they don't seem to go as high.
Yeah, a lot of, you know, when we talk about the British invasion and everything, these bands hit it huge, obviously, in Britain, but it took some of them a while, and some of them
Yeah.
didn't even hit it over here, strange enough. But, it's interesting, and we're lucky that they did finally break in the U.S. because we weren't churning out a ton of great music at the time here in the U.S. But,
No.
in early years, Mick Jagger and Keith Richards weren't really writing. They were doing mostly covers, but I think it was the Beatles that kind of urged them to, I wouldn't say specifically urged them, but from listening to what the Beatles were doing, what their success was, is when Keith Richards and Mick Jagger started doing a lot of the writing together, and they became a pretty powerful combo.
Monkey see, monkey do.
There you go. And the first Jagger and Richards single that they wrote together to reach number one in the UK was The Last Time. I don't know that song very well, but it was the first one. And obviously in the summer of 65, their first worldwide hit, number one everywhere. I Can't Get No Satisfaction.
Yeah.
Still their top selling song of all time. I think everyone knows that. It's been used in movies and shows and TV commercials and everything. And,
Yeah.
a lot of the songs people recognize from the early 60s are like 19th Nervous Breakdown, Mother's Little Helper, Paint It Black, As Tears Go By. Some of their later ones, late 60s, early 70s, are Jumping Jack Flash, Sympathy for the Devil, what am I thinking? Street Fighting Man, Honky Tonk Man, Gimme Shelter, Can't Always Get What You Want. Those are the later 60s. And obviously the Tongue and Lips logo that you see, the famous Rolling Stones, that was pretty much featured on all their 70s and later 70s and later albums.
All right.
So, and that's pretty well known. A lot of people with that tattoo out there.
Oh, yeah, it's a very iconic logo.
Yeah, very iconic. And I think you'll know some of their later songs from the later 70s, Brown Sugar, Wild Horses, Beast of Burden, Shattered. They've got good music. They even went into disco a tiny bit. But
Yes, they did.
we'll try and forget about that. But Mick Taylor actually quit the band in 1974 and was replaced by Ronnie Wood.
Oh.
And he was famously in the Byrds and the Jeff Beck Group and Faces. So he was a fairly famous musician, and
Yeah.
he joined him in 1974. They've had a ton of comeback tours, right? I mean, or I don't know, I'd say last tour, but they've had a ton of comeback tours, and they've just been probably, if not one of the most popular touring bands that have ever been around.
Yeah.
Still racking up. I think it was in 17, 18, and 19, I believe, they were the top grossing live band. And they should be for how much they charge.
Yeah. They didn't get themselves into nearly as much hot water with the public by saying that they're more popular than Jesus. But, performing has still been a safe thing for them.
Yeah.
They haven't angered the Christian right.
Well, and over their tenure, they've released 30 studio albums, 23 live albums, 12 compilation albums, totaling over 350 songs. So, they're the fourth best-selling group of all time.
Wow.
And I think that's behind the Beatles, Elvis, and I can't remember. It might be Led Zeppelin. I'm not really sure, but a lot of that's debated too.
Could be Taylor Swift.
And I hope not. So they've sold over 250 million albums worldwide. So they're a fairly successful band, we can say.
I'd say so.
So.
Even if you don't know the Rolling Stones, which you're lying if you don't, you know that there's a magazine that bears their name.
Well, and they're so tangled in popular culture. I mean, you can't watch a movie, a TV show, a commercial, or anything without hearing a Rolling Stones song of some sort, right?
Oh, absolutely.
They're all over the place. So they're an amazing band. I've always loved them. Like I said, I love them alongside the Beatles. And that's why we're doing Let It Bleed tonight. So we'll get on to the album. Let It Bleed was released on November 28th of 1969. So it's the 8th studio album by the Stones.
Wow.
So they'd been at it, and by this time they were writing most of their own material, right?
Yeah.
It was produced by Jimmy Miller, You know, he had famously produced Steve Winwood, Blind Faith, Spencer Davis Group, Traffic, all kinds of other groups.
Oh, wow.
Another guy you'll notice the name of that we've talked about on other podcasts, the engineer was Glenn Johns. You know, he's been involved obviously here with the Stones, the Beatles, the Who, all kinds of bands. I mean, just he's one of the main engineers of the late 60s and 70s. And assistant engineer was Bruce Botnick, funny enough, and he was involved with the Doors quite heavily.
Okay.
So, you know, and like I said earlier, Brian Jones, you know, because of all his drug use and his absenteeism from the recording, he was fired and replaced by Mick Taylor in July of 69. I think he's only, you know, like I said earlier, he's only on 2 songs on this album, and Mick Taylor's on the rest of them. And Mick Taylor stayed with him for another 5 years until he quit. So, Nicky Hopkins, who we've talked about in other episodes with some other bands, he played a lot of piano and keyboards on this this album, and he's just a great session musician, and he's been involved with some of the most popular bands, you know. And so this album reached number 3 in the U.S. as all, and number 1 in the U.K. And strange enough, they didn't release a single from this album.
That surprises me.
Yeah, it's definitely straight album driven, and you know, which is more of a common thing, you know, nowadays. But you know, people release singles, but they're on the album, you know. And at the time, well, like what the Beatles were doing, and some of the other British bands, where they'd release a couple singles and then release the album, but the singles wouldn't be on the album, right?
Yeah,
it's kind of an interesting way of doing things. But this Let It Bleed was inducted in the Grammy Hall of Fame in 2005, and you know, deservedly so. I don't know what took so long, but I don't know how they figure all that stuff out, and I don't know what it means anyways.
Sounds like the Rolling Stones been real busy people, and it's a fitting name. The Rolling Stone gathers no moss. These guys they're all over the place. So maybe they had to wait that long just to get them to settle down to get them in one place.
Well, I mean, they're entering their 7th decade.
Yeah,
as a band, and I mean, when you think of that, that's just crazy and amazing, you know. But you know, the majority of Let It Bleed was recorded at Olympic Studios in London. A lot of the vocals were recorded at Elektra Studios in L.A., which is where the Doors recorded all their albums. You know, that's who they were signed to, as Elektra. And that's, I think, where Bruce Botnick comes in as the assistant engineer. So.
Yeah.
And one interesting thing, and I was showing you this album beforehand, is the cover art on this album. And this is what makes vinyl stand apart from digital music, and even CDs for that matter, and especially tapes, is the cover art. To hold that cover art in your hand is what makes vinyl so special. And I think it's why you've seen a resurgence, you know, why the last few years vinyl's outsold CDs. You know, it's right now the most popular physical media there is, which is kind of strange, you know.
Yeah, well, they're, about 15 inches square? These,
something like that. But I mean, 40 years after they, pretty much 40 years after they quit doing a lot of vinyl. I mean...
Yeah, because the vinyl was replaced by cassette tapes.
Mainly,
or
I mean...
Maybe the 8-track.
You still had vinyl in the late 80s and stuff like that, but it pretty much died off, and CDs started coming in. But... You know, the cover art's really interesting because it's and if anyone's aware of it, it's like an old antique phonograph, right?
Yeah.
It's got a bunch of items stacked on top of each other. There's a clock, there's a pizza, a tire, and it's all topped off with a cake with a bunch of little figurines on top of it that are supposedly representing the Rolling Stones, right?
Yeah.
But it's a pretty cool album cover, and you know that I think that was what was one of the neatest things about going into a record store and picking up an album and just seeing that art. You know, I love getting some of them at the secondhand stores and seeing the art people have added to them.
Sure.
You know, so
yeah, because you get a little bit of this with CDs, but CDs are, I think, a 5-inch square, so it's not nearly as clear on the detail.
Yeah, it's not a piece of art in the same way.
No,
you know?
I'd say maybe the closest CD that's come to iconic album art would be Nirvana's
Nevermind.
Yeah, Nevermind, yeah.
Well, you know, and so this was the last Rolling Stones album actually released in mono. And the mono is actually just a fold-down version of the stereo, but it was still the very last album they ever released in mono. So, and another kind of key fact about this album is Rolling Stone ranked it as high as number 41 in the top 500 not best selling, but the top 500 albums of all time. And I think that was in 2020, I think, when it hit number 41. But if anyone's familiar with the Rolling Stone list, it changes every time they release it, every year, every 2 years, or whatever. So but still, it ranks up there pretty high, and I don't disagree with that at all.
It should be up there pretty high. Once you hear all these songs, you'll understand why it's there.
And that's the reason I chose it for tonight. So, so let's get into the album. Side one. It opens up with a fairly popular song that I think most people know or are aware of, or at least when they hear it for the first time, have probably heard it, because this song has been covered by a number of bands. It's been covered by Grand Funk Railroad, U2, Mary Clayton, numerous numerous others. Yes, not me, but you know the band.
Yeah, Bono.
But
Bono's band.
But this song has been featured in a lot. I mean, I was looking up the list, and it is a laundry list of TV shows and movies. You know, Goodfellas, Casino, that 70s show, The Simpsons, Dexter, all kinds of shows this has been in. And
there's a lot of actors out there working today that don't have filmographies as long as this song.
that's true. And of course, the song is "Gimme Shelter." And
which I don't know this song by the title "Give Me Shelter." I know this song as "Just a Shot Away."
Yeah. Well, and you know, one thing I love about this song is I love the intro.
Yeah.
I don't know why. It's just, you know, it's perfect. You know, this song just gives you a feeling. And you know, this was a song written by Mick Jagger and Keith Richards. And supposedly it was about war, murder, rape, fear, those kind of things. You know, read into it what you want. Like I've said many a times, I'm not a huge lyric guy. You try to listen to the lyrics, but I know you probably had a harder time with that on this album.
This one was a tough one, mostly because the lyrics blend in so well with the instruments.
Well, and the Stones are kind of notoriously hard to understand their lyrics, you know.
Yeah. Well, have you seen Mick Jagger's mouth?
You think his lips get in the way?
Yeah, I think so.
they are, though. Notoriously, it's hard to understand exactly what they're saying. I'll go back and look at some of the lyrics. I'm like, songs I've listened to for years and years and thinking they're one thing, and then, oh no, they're something else. You know, completely.
Which makes me wonder why they pronounce things the way they do.
Yeah. So speaking of Rolling Stone, the magazine, they actually ranked this song as number 13. This is in their list from 2021. Number 13 in their top 500 songs of all time. So they're putting this song as...
That's up there.
Yeah, this is pretty much up there.
Yeah, a song that sings rape, murder. It's just a shot away.
Yeah, let's put that up very high.
Yeah.
When I was talking about who covered this, Mary Clayton is one of the people who covered this, but she's actually the guest vocals on this song. When you hear the female vocals in the song, you know, it's just a shot away.
It's her that's screaming.
Yeah,
rape,
it's her. And
murder.
She's supposedly a famous soul and gospel singer, but I'm going to be completely honest with you. I've heard of her before because of this, and that's about where it ends for me.
How steeped are you in soul and gospel music?
Not as well as I should be, I guess.
Me either. Yeah.
But Nicky Hopkins, again, he plays the piano on this song.
He plays the crap out of the piano. Yes, he does.
From the intro, and then I would say for me, the guitar solo on this is the quintessential Rolling Stones sound.
Oh, absolutely.
It's perfect. This song, if you want to listen to Rolling Stones, number one, this album, but this song is kind of the quintessential Rolling Stone song.
This is the Rolling Stone song.
Yeah. Now, I say that kind of strangely, I guess, because when you talk about the early stuff, that's a little bit different. But this just to me epitomizes the Stones.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, this is if you're going to stick a pin in the Rolling Stones, this is where you stick it.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. This is a great song. I don't have any complaints about it.
And it's weird because the rest of the album is so bluesy and
country.
Country, yeah.
Yeah.
This is very much a rock and roll song.
Yeah, it is. And from the intro to the guitar solo to just everything fits perfect in this song.
Yeah.
And I guess that's why it's ranked so high. I guess that's why it's been in so many films and TV shows and commercials and things. And
Yeah.
I really don't have anything bad to say about this song. What are your thoughts?
It's a song that really tackles some big topics head on.
Now, here you go again with your lyrics.
Well, yeah, it headbutts you with. I mean, well, don't you may not understand most of what the lyrics are, but rape, murder, war. I mean, these are huge topics, and it tells you, yeah, it's just a shot away. Like the whole of society was just teetering on the brink of like revolution. So yeah, all these things were really just a shot away.
Almost kind of like where we are today.
Yeah, exactly.
So we're moving to the second song
Yeah.
on the first side, Love in Vain.
Stolen from Robert Johnson.
Yes. So this is a cover on the song, I believe, or I mean on this album. I believe it's the only cover on the album.
I think you're
I
right.
think everything
Yeah.
else was written by Jagger and Richards. So
This is very much a blues song.
it is, but I love the acoustic intro to this, and it's like a slower version of the blues with kind of a soft acoustic guitar throughout. It's got a really pretty blues electric slide guitar solo through the middle of it, and
Really sounds like a train.
yeah, I've heard the Robert Johnson version of this song, and it doesn't sound the same. But funny enough, the estate of Robert Johnson sued the Rolling Stones for this song for their portrayal of it, and
Yeah, which is, him. This is them appropriating his culture.
I'm guessing so.
Yeah.
But the Stones settled out of court or whatever for it, and it was without. But
Yeah. So this is Robert Johnson after he sold his soul to the devil at the crossroads, right?
Oh, yeah.
Because it's good.
it's actually probably his grandchildren that were just trying to collect some easy money.
Yeah.
Because it was his estate, it wasn't him. But this is a good song. It's a good, just slow little blues acoustic number.
Yeah.
Good album track. I don't see it being real remembered. I don't think it's going to break any records or anything like that.
I'll tell you, if you're ever driving through Louisiana on a hot summer afternoon, and you're passing by a bayou, this is the theme music you want playing.
Oh,
This song is like the theme song of Louisiana.
not Give Me Shelter, huh?
No, not giving
Because
shelter.
I'd be searching for shelter.
You probably should, but this one just feels like a Louisiana bayou.
Yeah, so for me, good acoustic intro. It has good slide guitar. It's slow, but it's good for a blues song. Good album track, and that's about where I'd leave that one at.
Exactly.
So next song, I'm going to preface this by saying this is my least favorite song on the album.
Okay.
Country Tonk. Country Honk.
Country honk. Yeah.
Country Tonk. Country Tonka Truck.
Yeah.
No, but Country Honk.
That would have been a better song.
It would have been.
Yeah.
But, this is basically the original version of Honky Tonk Women.
Okay.
But it's straight in country.
Yeah,
And
it is.
I am not a country fan at all. And the violin dominates this song.
Oh yeah.
And I hate it.
So, yeah, this is a song for the hill people, the music of the inbred. Yeah.
Yeah, you can tell it's the same song as Honky Tonk Women, right? But it's done in a country way. It's a lot slower. The only thing I do like about this is in the middle, from the first to the middle, there's some good acoustic strumming in it that I really like.
Yeah.
But
If they would have added some more banjo to it, it could have been bluegrass.
yeah. I dislike this song heavily. So this was released actually 5 months after Honky Tonk Women came out.
Well, you're not hill people from Appalachia.
Well, I'm guessing not, but I dislike this song, and I think that it could have been excluded from this album. I can handle a tiny bit of country feel to things, but this one was way too much for me, and it's a skipper.
She blew my nose and then she blew my mind. And in this version, you kind of think he's talking about his sister.
It could be. That's kind of where I'm going with it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is not, I love Honky Tonk Women, the song, and it does have a little country to it, but it's got the rock and roll. This to me is the worst parts of that song.
Yeah.
And it just doesn't do it for me. So so we go on to the next song, Live With Me. It's another song written by Jagger and Richards. This was actually the first song they recorded with Mick Taylor when he come on board after replacing Brian Jones. So you've got Nicky Hopkins playing piano on this one again. Saxophone is Bobby Keys, which I'm going to go straight into it. I like the bass intro. I really do like it, and I like when the guitar kicks in. It's got a really good beat to it. It's got good guitar accents throughout. I like all that. All that. My one complaint about this song is the saxophone.
The saxophone. Yeah.
They do the solo in the middle of the song with the saxophone. If they would have replaced that with a good guitar solo, it would have been a much better song. I like the song layout. I like the rhythm of it. I like pretty much everything about it except the saxophone. So Bobby Keys.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny his name's Bobby Keys. Shouldn't he be playing a piano with the name Bobby Keys?
Nicky Hopkins needs to change places with Bobby Keys. Maybe it'll be a different song. Definitely be a different song if they did that.
Well,
Keith Richards needs to stay on the guitar, though. This is some excellent guitar.
Yeah.
So good that I wrote it down on my notes. Good guitar.
And I like the guitar as well, and that's why I think they kind of blew it with a saxophone solo. It just doesn't seem to fit in. And
no, it seems like they're in some of these songs they're throwing in other instruments because they want to throw in other sounds.
Well, and I think that was kind of the sign of the times as well, that you're seeing a lot of, you've seen that with the Beatles a ton.
Yeah.
A lot of experimentation.
Yeah, the
trying
sitar.
to get different sounds. Yeah, things like that. But
So yeah,
I just
the
do not.
saxophone is not the sitar of the inbred.
No, and I'm just not a huge sax fan unless it's played right. But if they would have taken this song and recorded it with guitar over that sax solo, I think it would have been an excellent song. Because other than that, it's a great song.
I agree, because Keith Richards, boy, he can play a guitar.
Yeah, he's an excellent guitar player, even though he is dead.
Yeah. May his soul rest in peace, and his body continue to play for another 10 years or 15 years.
I wonder, it must have been when did he ever snort his father's ashes? I know he wanted to, but...
Hey, man, his father's a hell of a drug.
I guess so. So we move on to the next song. It's the title track, Let It Bleed.
Yeah.
Another song written by Jagger and Richards.
Another song that I don't know by the title, but I know this song.
You know the song, yeah.
Because this is, we all need someone we can lean on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it gets a little dirtier than that, though, too, doesn't it?
This is a very sexual song. Overtly sexual.
Yes, it is. I mean, it's got a good acoustic sound to it. It's kind of country a little bit in it, but I don't mind it because they're not overwhelming it with a violin or anything like that. Funny enough, you've got piano on this song, but Ian Stewart plays piano, not
really?
not Nicky Hopkins. Yeah, and I don't know if that's because he wasn't available or what. I have no idea, but the one thing I can say about this song is I think if they would have done this version even a little heavier, it wouldn't have been an because I like the song, don't get me wrong, but if it was heavier and a little faster, I think this could have been an amazing song.
I think so. This it's a little too in your face, overtly sexual. I think if they would have gone a little heavier and a little bit harder with it, then you would have cloaked and put a little bit more mystery into the music.
Well, see, that's where you go with you being a lyric guy again,
I am
which I'm not at all.
Yeah.
But it's got a lot of drug and sex references, like Coke and Sympathy, Junkie Nurse and Cream on Me and I'll Cream on You,
Yeah. There's, let's see, he says, let's see, some of the lyrics. My breasts are always open. And there's always a space in my parking lot.
Interesting.
So yeah,
I'm
this
sure they're
is
just talking about it at the shopping center.
bullshit.
Well,
Yeah.
okay, well,
And
whatever you
then
think.
like it gets real nasty. He says we all need someone. We all need someone we can bleed on. Bleed
Yeah.
on me.
Yeah.
You're gonna get hepatitis that way.
Well, it wasn't as big of a deal back then.
You know, everybody had hepatitis back then.
Overall, though, this is a good song. It's got some good acoustic sound to it. I like the piano in it.
Yeah.
Even though it's got a little country to it, and I don't like country, it's enough rock and roll that it kind of masks that up. It would be nice to see a heavier version of this because I do like the rhythm of the song.
Yeah.
It's a good song. It closes out side one, and pretty strong side really.
It really is. I know. Let's see, 2/3 of the songs on this album.
You just don't know them by their names.
I don't know. I don't know most of them by their names. Even the ones I know, I don't know by their names.
I think that's how a lot of people would be.
Yeah.
I think side one is very strong, except Country Honk. I think that was left off, or
Well, it was written by honkies, Mick Jagger and Keith Richards.
I guess so.
They're honkies.
I think if they would have put Honky Tonk Woman on this, that would have
Oh yeah,
pushed this.
That'd be better.
Yeah, I mean that would have been amazing. Of course, they'd already released it, but okay. So now we open up side two. We flip it over and listen to this clear vinyl, which was kind of interesting. I have this in black vinyl as well, and I don't know why we didn't listen to that one, but
I don't know, but I enjoyed it.
yeah, it was good.
Yeah,
So
this is a train song.
Midnight Rambler.
Yeah,
Yeah, another one of their popular songs. I really like the guitar intro on this, and when the bass kicks in, it's got a really catchy bass beat to it. Another song written by Jagger and Richards, and according to lore, it's kind of a semi-biography of Albert DeSalvo. He's the one who confessed to being the Boston Strangler.
yeah.
And you catch a little bit of that in here if you really look at the lyrics. You have to look at the lyrics because to hear the lyrics is pretty tough on this one.
Yeah, you can't understand a dang thing that Mushmouth is saying.
No, you can't. And
But
there's
he does mention the Strangler.
he does. Towards the end, he does. There's that whole section where he says, "Don't you do that, don't you do that, don't you do that," and it kind of slows down. Don't do that, don't do that. And I like the way this song slows down and then speeds back up.
This song is a train ride, going from one station to the next.
It really is because
It sounds like, I mean, it has the rhythm and the beat of a train.
it does.
Yeah, and
Because it does it slows down to such a slow beat, but then it picks back up.
and accelerates again. Yep.
But if you really want to know what the lyrics are on this song, you're going to have to follow them along, look them up online or something, because it's hard to catch what he's saying in this song if you don't know.
Yeah, and this is the song. This is the point in my notes where I actually wrote down, noting that Mick Jagger and Keith Richards had written most of these songs. I'm curious to know if they were both holding the pencil at the same time while they were writing.
I don't think so. I think a lot of songs, I think they worked in a way that the Beatles did a little bit with Lennon and McCartney. I think that, Richards would write a lot of the lyrics or whatever, or vice versa. I'm sure some of these Rolling Stones experts out here are going to scream at me because I don't know exactly how it works.
Set us straight. Send an email. We want to know, is Keith Richards the lyrics guy or is Mick Jagger the lyrics guy?
And see, I think with the Stones, it doesn't really matter because I can't hardly understand any of the lyrics.
Well, that's because of Mushmouth.
Well, yeah, but you don't mean that in a bad way.
No.
It's in a good way because I love Jagger singing.
That Mushmouth is $1 million Mushmouth.
More than $1 million, but
at least $5 million.
So this is a pretty long song. It's almost 7 minutes long.
It really is. Yeah.
It's the second longest song on the album, and famously, Jagger plays the harp on this song as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So
because he's got the harmonica in there.
Yeah, but he plays harp as well.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's a good song. I really enjoy this song. I love the way it speeds up and slows down, and it's always been one of my favorite songs.
Jagger's a very talented guy, especially with the harmonica and the harp, both of them. This song, listen to it. That's one thing I did notice about the music is that the harmonica. I mean, there's tons of people that incorporate the harmonica into their music, but Jagger really knows how to play the harmonica.
Yeah, and it's not overdone. Like when we go back
Yeah.
to the earlier song where, the saxophone to me was overdone. The harp and the harmonica are not overdone in this song.
No,
And
they fit perfectly, especially especially with a train song like this, and it's very intentional that this was a train song.
yeah, and it's always been one of my, in my top tier of favorite Rolling Stones songs, and I was reading the lyrics on my phone as we were listening to it, and I've listened to this song thousands of times, and I didn't even know some of the lyrics, and even as I was reading them, I didn't understand them. So
Yeah. Well, once again, Mushmouth wrote it.
yeah, now you may want to rename him because you might offend someone calling him Mushmouth. It sounds like you're being.
Yeah. How about Lips?
Let's call him
Big
Lips.
Lips, yeah.
So that moves us into the next song, You Got the Silver. This is
Yeah.
another song written by Jagger and Richards, and this is the first song to feature Keith Richards as the lead vocal all the way throughout the song. He'd sang some vocals on some other songs, but he sings through this. And, I didn't even know it was him, because he does sound like Jagger a lot on this.
He really does.
I think especially for a casual Rolling Stones fan, wouldn't think any different of it.
And if you've seen Keith Richards, he does not have the lips.
No, he doesn't have lips.
Yeah.
Not at all.
But this is another Louisiana ballad for the inbred. So the people of the hill country will love it.
And how do you think these Louisiana, as you call them, songs make their way to a British rock group?
That's the real thing. That's the real puzzling question for me is, what's the fascination here? Because these are very much like songs for people of color.
Well, and I can tell you, all the British groups, especially the early 60s, adored and worshipped the blues.
Is that what
singers?
this is?
Yeah, and that's where a lot of this comes from.
I guess that's where the rock and roll comes from.
It really
from
is.
The blues,
This apparently was written about Keith Richards' girlfriend at the time, Anita Pallenberg, and they famously did record this first with Mick Jagger singing it, and there's some controversy on, well, did he not finish it or did they not like it? But I guess there's some, quite a few people out there that can confirm that no, they meant for Keith Richards to sing this song. They tried it with Jagger and they just didn't like the way it turned out. And of course it was, I'm assuming Richards, if it was about his girlfriend, he's the lyric guy behind this. So it does make sense for him to sing it.
Maybe he's singing more from the heart.
Yeah, and Brian Jones, this is the very last song he played on. Mm-hmm. He played the auto harp on this song, and so, before his death, this was the last song he participated on with the Rolling Stones.
I guess that would be right. It's a nice song, a little softer than some of the other more bluesy songs.
Yeah, it's kind of slow, but it's a decent song. Once
Mm-hmm.
again, it's got Nicky Hopkins on piano and organ on this one as well.
Yeah.
But it's a good song. It's a good album track. We wouldn't see it released as a single, wouldn't see it becoming a super popular song, but a dedicated Stones fan is going to like it and going to like it for what it is, with Richard's first vocal performance on it and everything. And it's a good song.
Yeah, I enjoyed it.
I like it. So that moves us on to what I think is probably my favorite song on the album, is Monkey Man.
Yeah.
I've liked this song for years and years. Another Jagger and Richards composition. Supposedly it was some kind of tribute song to an Italian pop artist named Mario Schifano.
Of course.
And I don't even know what that means, but
yeah.
Again, it's got Nicky Hopkins on piano again. And I really love the intro to this song. It's just got the little piano intro, and then once the guitar kicks in, it's kind of a heavy song for what it is, And I've just always liked this song. What are your thoughts on it?
This is good rock and roll. In fact, I wrote down in my notes, I said, is this the first rock and roll song on this album? Looking back, I realize that it's not the first rock and roll song on the album. There's been some others, but coming off of You Got the Silver, which is very country.
Yeah, you had your palate cleansed a
Yeah,
little bit
exactly. This one's like, this is kind of refreshing. It's a good song. And Mick Jagger is a monkey. Now, once again, I'm ticking everybody off.
there. Yeah, and all
He
his
said so.
and all his friends are junkies.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to figure out what that has to do with this Italian pop artist, but
Yeah, Mario Schifano.
maybe they're singing it in a third person. I don't know.
Well, obviously, we all know who Mario Schifano is.
Well, the guitars are good and heavy throughout. I really enjoy the guitars at the end of this song, and Mick Jagger just screaming at the end that he's a monkey. You know.
Oh, yeah.
This is just a good all around song, and I think
This is a concert song. Yeah, this is a song where when you go to the Rolling Stone concert, you want to see Mick Jagger and what he's doing while he's screaming, I'm a monkey.
And I wonder if the Stones play this. You know, there's a lot of songs because they've got so many. There's a lot they don't play in concert.
Yeah.
If anyone knows, write into us and let us know. Do they play this song in concert?
And once again, this is album number 8 for the Rolling Stones. So yeah, it might be that this one never made it on stage.
Yeah, well, and I'm not, as much as I like the Stones, I'm pretty familiar with most of their albums. I'm not that dedicated fan that knows all their recording processes. And I don't know every song they play live, but I know with over 350 songs that they've recorded that there's probably quite a few of them that don't get played live, and so it'd be interesting to know. But I really like Monkey Man, and it's probably the song I've known the longest off this album. I knew this before I ever listened to the album. I've known this song since I was a little kid, so it's a good song, and
little kids love monkeys.
Yeah, probably my favorite.
Yep.
So that gets us to the last song. You Can't Always Get What You Want.
Triumphant finish.
Yes. And a lot of people have said this was kind of the Stones' reply to the Beatles' Hey Jude, kind of that long, because this is the longest song at about 7.5 minutes on this album. It finishes out the album. And Hey Jude had been out. It was a long kind of...
Yeah. Well, this is, for as long of a song as this is, it's a lot easier for me listening to. You Can't Always Get What You Want repeated 3 times rather than la 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 Hey Jude. Yeah.
Well, yeah, Hey Jude's got your first couple verses, and then for 5 minutes, na 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 na. Yeah. So I really like this song's intro.
Oh yeah, the choral entrance.
The acoustic intro is amazing on it. I'm saying the acoustic. It starts with the London Bach Choir opens up, and it has Madeline Bell, Doris Troy, and Annette Newman singing on it.
I thought it was children.
That's what it said in the album.
Yeah.
So
that's even better.
But the London Bach Choir, but then I like the acoustic guitar intro that kind of kicks in after that. It's another song, written by Jagger and Richards. Rolling Stone ranked this, I think, as high as, I seen number 100 in the top 500 songs of all time.
That's it? I'm surprised.
Yeah, this is kind of an epic Rolling Stone song.
Yeah, this is an extremely popular song.
Yeah, you've got Al Cooper, who is a famous musician from Blood, Sweat, and Tears. He plays the piano and organ on this one, and the French horn.
Oh, wow.
So he had a lot to...
See, that's a good point, and I didn't even know that there was a French horn in this because that's how well it fit in.
Yeah,
it didn't stand out.
And I said there was no singles released on this, but they did release this as a B-side to the Honky Tonk Woman.
Oh,
in July of '69.
That's fitting.
But then they released it as a single in 1973, so not as part as the album, but just they decided to release it as a single, and it reached number 42 on the Billboard Top 100, which seems kind of low for this song.
Yeah, I guess people just weren't ready in 1969 for this.
I don't know what it is.
Maybe they weren't ready in 1973 for this. But.
Well, it's funny as we review these songs that we're still hearing, go to our other episodes or the ones we're going to release soon as well, is you hear these songs that you consider epic masterpieces and you still hear them on multiple radio stations this day. And then you look at what happened when they were released, say in 1960s or 70s or whatever, and they didn't do that well. And it's kind of surprising because some songs, not only stand the test of time, and not only hold up, but they seem to shine more as time goes by. And then some songs that were super, super popular just don't get any radio play nowadays and aren't popular. It's amazing, and I don't know what it is or what makes it that way, but it's this song, but this whole album as well holds up really well.
It really does. Thing I like about this song is they do sing 3 times over, "You can't always get what you want," and then they follow it up with, "But if you try sometimes, you just might find you get what you need." There's 4 verses in this song. The first one's about seeing a lady at the reception who she's got like a glass of champagne or something, and it sounds like he's hesitant to approach her, even though he wants to. Then it looks like the second verse is going to a demonstration, so some sort of a protest. Because all of these things, you're trying to get what you want. So he wants maybe this lady's number. You go to a protest, you want to get what it is that you're protesting about. Then number 3, you go to the drugstore to pick up a prescription. And that's about the time that it starts getting a little funny.
Well, you know what this reminds me of, and I don't mean to keep harkening back to the Beatles, but you read, you listen to A Day in the Life that was written by John Lennon, and he's reading all these articles out of the newspaper. It kind of reminds me of that. It's almost like the day in the life of someone, you know. Was this Keith Richards or Mick Jagger, what they were doing during that day, and they're actually writing it down, I mean, here you go diving into the lyrics.
Yeah. And then verse number 4, he goes to another reception, and this is where he comes up to Deceptive Mary with blood stains on her hands.
Yeah.
Hey, you're going to get what you need.
I guess so. Funny enough on this song, Jimmy Miller is on the drums instead of Charlie Watts, and I don't know why. I was reading that in the liner notes, and I don't know why that is, but I'm sure... Once again, Rolling Stones fans are yelling at me for not knowing, but interesting.
You're not getting your deep dives here, guys. So sorry, we're just having a good time reviewing some excellent albums.
Well, and we've listened to them. I've listened to this album for years and years, but, like I said, it's a different thing when you sit down and say you're going to review it, and you really start listening to these parts. Like, in the second verse of this, I believe it's some maracas that come in. Mm-hmm. And I love the use of those in this. Yeah. It sounds good. It's just kind of in the background instead of straight up front, And sometimes when you overbear with certain instruments, it's just too much. But this song is a beautiful song. Yeah. You don't need to know the lyrics. You don't need to, it's just a good song.
Yeah.
It's got a good feel to it.
Even as far as the lyrics go, it's just got a very quotable message in its chorus.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. You can't always get what you want, but try sometimes, and you might find you get what you need.
Well, and it's probably no more true than that, is it?
That's right.
So what are your overall thoughts of Let It Bleed?
This was a really good album, better than I expected.
Really?
Yeah, I'm not a big Rolling Stones fan.
What were you expecting? Because, here's another interesting is when Tyler comes over and we listen to the album, he doesn't know what album we're listening to until I pull it out and throw it on the turntable.
I was expecting more rock and roll. I didn't realize there was going to be so much blues and so much country in this.
Well, the Stones are very blues based.
I get that now.
I think the difference between them and the Beatles, they're both blues based, but the Beatles are definitely more blues pop based.
Yeah.
And the Stones are more blues rock and roll based.
For sure.
Both of them very important in their area, obviously. And you know, and I think that's what made both bands popular is even though they were friends, people like, you know, history likes to stake them against each other. Like,
I know I do.
Like the bands didn't like each other, but they all hung out. They were friends. They, you know.
I like pitting them against each other like, you know, mom and dad. Mom says I can't go sleep over at that kid's house. I'm going to go ask dad.
Yeah, but, you know, it's just great we have both bands. And not just those two bands, but all the bands that were around. But, you know, I give this album a 9 out of a 10. Mm-hmm. What would you give it?
I think 9's a bit high. I'm going to give this one an 8.
Yeah,
it's really good rock and roll. A lot of blues in it. Too much country for my taste.
And see, I don't think there's too much country. I think Country Honk is the only song that's country.
Yeah.
I think the other one's maybe borderline. Country Honk, not only is it in the title, but the song is just straight country with that overbearing violin.
The violin, yeah.
And, you know, I rate all the song. You know, there's some album tracks and there's some good, you know, radio play songs. Yeah. Country Honk to me needs to be thrown out on this. And even if it wasn't replaced with something else, I think it would strengthen the album.
Oh, absolutely it would. And this overall, this album needs to be bumped up higher on, and maybe, I don't know, is Rolling Stone, the magazine, is that affiliated with the Rolling Stones?
No.
Group? I didn't know. I was wondering if maybe they were being modest and didn't want to toot their own horn too much, although they tooted the crap out of that saxophone. Yeah.
Well, and that, you know, if I was to go, I would probably rate this a 10 out of 10 album if it wasn't for Country Honk and if it wasn't for the saxophone in, was it in Live With Me?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, let's see, I got my notes right here.
No, that's right. It was Live With Me had the saxophone in it.
Yeah. And like I said, I actually really like that song. I just wish they would have done a guitar solo. Yeah. The saxophone just kind of drowned it out for me.
Really? That's all that they needed to do? Because, I mean, the guitar was the best. Then they had the piano. Then they had the saxophone down the bottom.
But overall, a very good album. I'd suggest anyone that hasn't listened to it to go listen to it because, you know, most people have heard Gimme Shelter. Most people have heard Can't Always Get What You Want. You know,
and
probably have heard Midnight Rambler, I'm sure. But the album is a good listen. You know, I always have it on repeat while I'm working and things. I like the album. So go give it a listen. Let it bleed.
Yep, let it bleed.
And so that's it for us tonight here at Classic Vinyl Podcast. But once again, if you would like us to review an album from the Classic Vinyl area? Did I say area?
Era. Yeah,
era.
You said area.
Okay, well, same.
That's okay.
Isn't it an area?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So,
but I'll tell you, we've told people to send emails like 3 or 4 times throughout this episode. What email do they need to send it to, Justin?
Let's do that. If you have any suggestions, comments, review requests, you want to yell at us for what we don't know or what we've said wrong.
I'm so ignorant.
That's fine. Send us an email to classicvinylpodcast@gmail.com. We're available on all popular podcasting platforms, and we're on Instagram. We're on Twitter. So reach out to us, and we've got a lot of good albums ready to go. And, you know, any suggestions you guys have would definitely be, well, we would consider them. Let's put it that way. But we appreciate you taking your time to listen to us, and until next time.
Thank you so much for listening to Classic Vinyl Podcast. And don't forget to subscribe on Spotify or Apple Podcast or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Follow us on Instagram at Classic Vinyl Podcast for updates, and also share us with your music-loving friends.